From the very beginning, Naoki Urasawa's Monster is a narrative that spends an effectively excruciating amount of time pondering the concept of human emptiness, of the void, of situations that will leave a person totally wandering, broken, aimless, and apathetic to all things. While it handles its characters and themes with a tactful elegance, it is not afraid to horrify with a lot of the uncomfortable questions it tackles. And one of the most prominent of those is the following. When all is stripped away from a human, what becomes of that empty husk? The answer, by and large, tends to be one of two terrible things: darkness or death. But as I have talked about before, Monster is more balanced than an exercise in futility, and there is a hidden third option. One that can be found through the journey of a certain Wolfgang Grimmer, and one that, while extremely tragic on multiple levels, presents some light to balance out that ever-present idea of the void. During the time of the story, Wolfgang Grimmer is a freelance journalist secretly investigating cases of child experimentation in order to bring these terrible deeds to light. In actuality, he is one of the survivors of 511 Kinderheim and is desperately trying to uncover the truth of it and similar situations to better understand himself and the world. This was an incident conducted by the internal division of the German government in order to reprogram children to make them emotionless, robotic soldiers for the military to use at their whim, despite the false, postured front of the orphanage being a means of proper re-education for children. 511 Kinderheim was essentially a lab that forcibly brought about the most prominent emotions from children, which usually led to conflict, in order to then use negative reinforcement to desensitize them and strip them of those prominent feelings, along with their memories. Children were told that there was no purpose to anything at all, that their dreams and goals in life were impossible, and that there was no chance of fulfillment for them. The names and identities of the subjects were disregarded, and they were given numbers instead, and in order to mold the children into perfect soldiers, they were told that they had to dismiss everything and just focus on strength and survival. Those with inadequate strength or mentality were tossed to the streets, with a permanently blunted affect and a disinterest in most things. Some died, whether it be during the experiments or years later due to various mysterious circumstances. And Grimmer in particular was subjected to unique experiments where the scientists attempted to form a split personality of sorts within him. These experiments ended up being successful, and Grimmer gained the persona entitled the Magnificent Steiner, a beast-like monster of a personality full of aimless rage and a penchant for bloodshed. This then became a permanent part of his psyche. Grimmer attended Kinderheim until age 14, after which he was then trained to become a spy. And as a result of all of these events, Grimmer's ability to feel emotions, especially extreme ones, was stunted. He was able to form a family due to a woman confessing her love to him, and him realizing that this all would be a good cover story for a spy. But after the tragic and untimely death of his son, he was unable to feel anything, and thus unable to grieve. His wife, disturbed by this and his general incapacity to feel, left him. Yet despite all of this, he is able to talk about these events without feeling any remorse or pain, and with a constant pleasant smile on his face. It would seem outwardly, and if you disregard his motivations for a second, that Grimmer was a great success for the experiment. A perfect, strong, emotionless individual with no capacity to feel. But a simple examination of Grimmer's actions and behaviors makes it clear that things are not quite as simple as that.
人間は感情をなくすことはできない。感情はどこかわからないところに迷い込んでいたんだ。まるで俺宛てに出した手紙が何十年も経ってから届いたみたいだ。
The majority of individuals in this world are characterized by an innate sentimentality. Humans inherently have feelings. We all have emotions, regardless of the nature of those emotions. It is just hard to express that sometimes. Sometimes, due to various circumstances, things get buried. Grimmer was always able to pretend extremely well. He could feign happiness and sadness. He could conceptually understand the human psyche as an outsider. He often helped others out of kindness and concern for their well-being. He was easily able to form rapport with people. He could explain to others how they should feel, even if he couldn't feel himself. And he would sometimes get emotional while doing so. Not to mention, his magnificent Steiner persona is an embodiment of compartmentalized rage and fury itself. As he dies, Grimmer makes it clear that his emotions never truly left him. They were just lost at sea. Yet I don't think they were as far away as he assumed. Though these feelings were not orthodox, I think they were able to bubble to the surface at points in a vicarious way, as he was able to feel things for himself through feeling for others. It's just that Grimmer never quite realized that they were there, having been resigned to a dead life anyway. 511 Kinderheim was an exercise that dismissed the idea of inherent nature, individuality, and identity, which is among the most terrible crimes that can be committed. In the end, life is pointless without an identity for the vast majority. But an identity can only be forged once you know your motivations or general purpose, and those things are so often intertwined with the connections we form. With people, with places, with art, whatever. These experiments stripped the children of that, and as such, stripped them of their lives.
あんたがやったことがどれほどの罪だったのか、人間の善悪の根幹を破壊するということが何を意味するのか、人間の中の怪物を目覚めさせることで何が起きるのか。人間は食事をうまいと思わなければならない。休日のピクニックを楽しみにしなければいけない。仕事が終わった後のビールがうまいと思わなきゃいけない。人間は子供が死んだ時、心の底から悲しいと思わなければいけない。
Being able to conceptualize the beauty and sorrow of the human condition while not being able to feel it is a pain I can scarcely imagine. But being able to lament one's apathy is not quite apathy, is it? Essentially, Grimmer is a display against nihilism throughout the story, despite his insistence that he is a shell. He very much believes in people the way Tenma does, and is an advocate for true human freedom more than anyone else in the story, despite being incapable himself. As someone who has lived most of his life without the ability to feel attachment, he knows better than anyone how pointless an existence that is. A stifling of expression and emotion is death. We attribute who we are to the connections we have, and erasing a person's ability to feel pleasure and joy and emotion is robbing them of the right to make connections and be a human being. It is not entirely different from killing them. It is just subjecting them to a slow, agonizing purgatory of a death. It is a grievous, horrible thing to do, and yet, Grimmer was a rare case. Even though he may not have realized it, he was able to quickly form attachments, to strike up a quick sense of camaraderie with Lunge, to befriend Tenma, to see enough possibility of fulfillment in this life to want to stop children from ending their own, even though he hadn't been fulfilled himself, to search for truths, and use those truths to help others. He himself would deny it, but Grimmer was a genuinely good person. One who was able to find it within himself to scrounge together some vague sense of value from this life that had been stolen from him.
聞いてるか？自分の耳で聞いてくれ。誰の命令でもなく、自分の心で、自分が何をやってるのか、自分の心で考えるんだ。できるよな。できる。
Choice, freedom, individuality, emotion, expression, the highs and lows of feeling. Grimmer had many significant events happen in his life, both professionally and personally. He was relatively successful, he got married, had a child, even experienced the death of his child. But thanks to the experiments of 511 Kinderheim, thanks to people like Bonaparte, all he felt during these times was a sense of numbness. As mentioned, there were little instances where he was able to tap into some empathy and emotion, but ultimately he was left unable to know how it felt to truly experience the joys and sorrows of existence, unable to be a true human being. As such, the greatest moments of Grimmer's life were ironically right at the end of it, during his most tumultuous times, because here he had finally unlocked his humanity. Because despite the deep suffering he endured in these final moments, the anger, the sadness, the pain, he was finally able to feel something. He was finally able to become human, to genuinely cry, not out of sadness for his life having ended, but out of a paradoxical happiness for finally being able to grieve and feel for his long-lost son, to live as others do. Truly, we are nothing without our connections, and those connections may alter, sever, and weaken over time, but we always feel their impact as we continue through our lives, strengthening us, teaching us, and helping us to be genuine. Not to mention, these connections work both ways. Grimmer was able to feel things through his relationships by the end, but his kind heart was able to impact others too. Lunge, Tenma, Suk, all the children, he impacted the lives of others, and his legacy was one of compassion, humanity, and truth. One that continued to enrich the world long after he departed it. As terrible as the majority of his life was, Grimmer is an example of this unrelenting emotion and how it comes about as a result of these attachments we form throughout life. He is the story's proof that you cannot simply erase these feelings, and his life is Monster's most succinct encapsulation of this idea. His selfless endeavor to champion the importance of genuine humanity despite his experiences is just as admirable as anything else from the story. And 511 Kinderheim may have stolen what should have been a fulfilling life from him, but for just a moment, just a tiny expanse of time, Wolfgang Grimmer was able to experience a glimpse of the blessing and curse that is the human spirit. And what a beautiful glimpse it was. Many thanks for watching.
これが本当の悲しみか。これが幸せか。